This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Ugh, you said you were over him, but his hoodie is still in your rotation. It's time. Grab your phone, snap a few pics, and sell it on Depop. Listed in minutes with no selling fees. And just like that, a guy 500 miles away just paid full price for your closure. And right on cue.
Hey, still got my hoodie?
Nope. But I've got tonight's dinner paid for. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste. List now with no selling fees. Payment processing fees and boosting fees still apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey, who you came through the snowstorm this past week, okay, right?
Well, I was more worried about you, Jim. We might have only got a couple inches. It kind of came out of nowhere. We had a 60-degree day on Friday, and then, of course, we get snow, I think, on Sunday. So, this is when colds all start happening. But tis the season. How about you, Jim?
Well, up here, that's the thing. I feel kind of bad because I have friends and family down in Massachusetts, and they were posting these pictures of 18 inches of snow and 24, inch, drifts. And, Nancy and I got maybe 8 inches. But as I was telling Eric as we were pre-gaming on this week's show, we did have this flock of turkeys that decided to ride out the storm at our house. And when I got up this morning, they were basically all on the deck. And I'm talking like 30 or 40 turkeys. And, they were looking in the window like, fat man, get out here with the birdseed.
Jim, that could have been a lot of Thanksgivings. I'm pretty sure you can put turkeys in the freezer and they're good for a long period of time.
I was more, that there were 40 of them, all right? Just sort of like my odds of taking one down as versus that, if you've ever looked at a full-size turkey, they're basically a raptor, big claws and anyway.
No, I don't know if I'd want to mess with them either. I'd probably stayed in the house and kept my distance. So smart on you. You made it here today. So you obviously didn't pick a fight with the turkeys.
I did not. But speaking of turkeys, and what's interesting is that I'm just fascinated by people's attitudes toward Wicked for good now, because no Oscar nominations. People are talking about how it's this disappointment somehow, and it's like, Eric, it's to date it's made $528 million worldwide. The franchise itself, the two films, has made $1,265 million worldwide. It's like I'm puzzled as to. You really have to work hard at this, selling this as this is somehow a disappointment. In fact, I have a quote here from Donna Langley, who is the chairman of NBCUniversal Entertainment, who was asked by Variety recently about, okay, what happens now? And Donna flat out says, we are looking at returning to the world of Oz. Again, in this interview with Variety, says, after the amazing success we've seen with the first two films, there are other ways we can branch out into the world building. So as far as Universal is concerned, it's still very early days when it comes to Wicked. So
That's a statement. That's not a bad. That's a statement. I don't think they were too concerned about the box office of the second one with a statement like that. It sounds like they're still very much in the Wicked business.
I would agree. And with that, folks, we have met our contractual obligation to talk about Wicked in this week's edition of the Epic Universal podcast. But before we now get to the news that Eric has rounded up for this week's show, we have to, of course, mention our sponsor, and that is unlockedmagic.com. And Epic Universal listeners, pay attention. Unlock Magic is offering a limited time deal for your upcoming Universal Orlando vacation. For a short time, you can get 7 days in the parks for the price of 5. That means 2 additional days at the Universal Orlando Resort with no extra ticket cost. Spend more time at Epic Universe, Islands of Adventure, and the original Universal Studios Florida. Unlock Magic has also simplified the planning process. You can now add Universal Express directly at unlockmagic.com, giving you the ability to skip the regular lines for most participating attractions and make the most of your time in the parks. Visit unlockmagic.com to secure that 745 ticket offer and start building your Universal Orlando Resort vacation today. Okay, and speaking of ticket media, first story this week you found is about a potential week-long ticket push. Is that right?
Well, we got ourselves a survey. I don't know where they just show up like turkeys on your front porch.
There we go.
Just surveys like crazy. 30, 40 surveys that we got here from anonymous people. But no, it's funny because, that's really interesting. The 7 days for the price of 5. That is kind of what this survey was all about. So got a couple questions here to throw out to you, Jim, to kind of get your idea on what they're pressing for. Because I think what you and Len often say, if there's a survey, there's a specific thing that they're asking. They're sending this for a reason. They have things that they want to know. So this survey kind of centers around the phrase, make it a week you'll never forget. So that was used on a lot of the phrases. And it was basically asking everyone how compelling this message was, or did it motivate them to visit? So the example I grabbed was, it said, based on this message alone, what do you think the ticket offer includes? And it says, make it a week you'll never forget. And the options are a discount that's always available, a limited time discount or offer, or a regular ticket with no discount. So it's just interesting that they kept using this make it a week you'll never forget. You make it a week you'll never forget. So I almost feel like we are now in the realm of Universal's not just a 2-day, 3-day add-on to your Orlando vacation. Do you get that vibe as well, Jim?
Oh, that amazing ad they introduced, ad campaign in November of last year that, by the way, is still bubbling up. We're now getting the long form versions of the individual elements of that commercial. I mean, they're leaning into the notion, you can go to Universal for the full time you're down there in Florida and have an amazing experience. 3 parks, 1 water park. I'm not saying 4 parks. They can't make. All right. But amazing hotels, a nighttime entertainment district. They make it a week you'll never forget. But for me, what's so funny is how far out folks will settle on this sort of stuff. And you were just talking about myself and Len. And this past week on Disney Dish, we talked about what's going on with Villains Land, and there's a redo going on. And just a little bit of color that we didn't get to discuss on that show. Supposedly Josh D'Amaro, the new head of the Walt Disney Company, his concern was, Villains Land just doesn't look like it's fun. I mean, it looked cool, but it didn't look fun. And that's the thing that, Josh evidently, and in fact, the interesting thing is Josh evidently went over to Epic Universe and Josh came back and said, that Darkmoor, the Universal Monsters section, it's really cool. But the fun land, the really fun land, is Burke.
Right. I was going to complete it. I didn't even hear this before. This is all breaking news to me. But Burke is fun.
Burke is fun.
Absolutely.
All right. And that's evidently what D'Amaro wants. He wants Villains Land to not be Darkmoor, but the Disney equivalent of Burke. And in fact, the one little cherry on the sundae here is the new the new catchphrase for Villains Land, and again, I don't know if this is going to make it all the way to the opening of, this edition of the Magic Kingdom, is a wicked good time.
I can't see them using the word wicked.
Well, but that's the thing, that you got to understand.
Give it a couple of years.
And for those of us, who live, who park our car in Harvard Yard, I'm here in New England. Wicked. Oh, it's a wicked good time. So it's been around longer than, Elphaba and Galinda.
No, sure. Yeah. Well, Jim, the other thing, so since we're talking about Walt Disney World, this is what I thought was kind of interesting in this quiz as well, or this survey, is kind of a perception question, because it asks you, the best of your knowledge, how many theme park or water parks can be found at Walt Disney World and then Universal Orlando? So they have you type in a number. Isn't that interesting that I mean, granted, we're you and I could probably name all the hotels and the resorts and so forth, but the average person taking this survey, how many do you think they actually choose for Walt Disney World? Do you think they get 6? Do you think that they would count the 2 water parks? Do they know they exist? Wow. And did Universal do a good enough job branding this whole campaign, 4 parks, to get it to the point where it's now equivalent? Because if you're not counting Disney's water parks and you're counting the water parks for Orlando, it's 4 against 4. And why wouldn't you? If you could stay at, Disney World for a week, why wouldn't you stay here for a week, right? Crazy.
I think you've nailed it. Now, also remember, this is, this is Universal, who still, there are still folks there who remember, when they, spent all that time and all that money to rebrand as Universal Escape, and nobody got that, we built a new nighttime complex. Nobody got that, there's a second gate here now, and we have our own on-site hotels. They literally had to, cold stop, 15 months later, and we are the Universal Orlando Resort. We have 2 theme parks. We have a nighttime day, So it's an issue they're a little sensitive of. But
I think they're going to ram it in our heads. I think that is their marketing approach, is everything, and this is what that survey is kind of saying. Is it working? Are we comparing? And then the last question on here that I thought was interesting was just asking a general questions, and I want your opinion on this. Now, basically, below are some of the destinations in the United States. Which of the following have you ever visited? And it lists Houston, New York, Dallas, Miami, Wildwood, Montana, Los Angeles, Orlando, Las Vegas, San Francisco, none of the above. What is this question?
I have to admit, now I got to go Wildwood, Montana. Why?
Right.
This is the first time I'm hearing of Wildwood, Montana.
It almost seems like one of those questions where it's just like, pick, they have a whole list, and then there's an obvious question that you're not supposed to pick just to see if you're a robot. Like, sorry, Wildwood, are you
okay, there we go.
But it's not the case, right? Is it? But I'm just, do you think these are like standalone location ideas? Or I originally was like, well, are they testing the market and seeing if other people are going here as opposed to Orlando? But I don't think they're worried about Orlando tourism. They were up. And
and in fact, on the heels of that amazing story last week about what's going on in Vegas, and it's like, holy cow. In fact, when are we visiting there again? We're there midweek, right? Which is, when they were saying, it's like, well, enjoy the ghost town. Evidently on the weekend, Vegas is still Vegas. People still fly in, still gamble, but it's midweek that the place is suffering. But all right, Wildwood, Montana. I'm going to check that out as soon as we get done here tonight.
Maybe they'll get their own horror unleashed there, and we don't know anything about it, but it'd be interesting to see what's going on there.
All right, so we have been chatting about Orlando. We now switch to the West Coast, where this is kind of an interesting development, especially given that we've just finished the Winter Games coming out of Milan.
Yeah, so and it just came up that Universal is named the official theme park partner of the Olympics in LA. What's that? LA 28. Is that how it's branded? LA 28 Olympics?
Yep.
Yeah, so they basically is just an official announcement, and from what I recall, they had some type of partnership with the Summer Games last time, right? In 2024.
I don't recall that. I mean, It is worth noting that, of course, the broadcast of the Olympics this time around were, NBC, Comcast. So they do have an association. So it's not all that far fetched that Universal would be the park, so to speak, for the LA games.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Jim, I thought so. I know when we went, it might have been 2024, first time down in Orlando. We got those refillable mugs, and I remember specifically seeing that they had the Olympics on there, but nothing in the park. There wasn't anything that was like, hey, special exhibits or anything like that. But I think it might be interesting that LA is not too far away, obviously, from the Hollywood studios. So do you think that they'll maybe have like some exhibits, or do you think they'll really lean in hard with that tourism that'll be coming in for the Olympics? Or is this just a branding thing of saying, all right, we're going to have it on Peacock and we'll have some signs and banners here, but nothing really exclusive for the park?
It's honestly hard to say because I mean, again, I think you and I have talked, not necessarily on this show, but about the last time the Summer Games were in LA back in '84. And what was fascinating about that was that tourism that summer at both Disneyland and Universal was significantly down. And that was on the back of they had done such a good job of frightening the residents of Los Angeles to the effect of, the Summer Olympics are coming down, the traffic's going to be terrible, and just all these people coming into the town, that a lot of folks in LA actually went out of town, when the Olympics were there, and, both Disneyland and Universal suffered because of that. So, I just wonder, if some of this is on the back of let's not have that happen again. It's like, hey, Woody Woodpecker, he's a great fan of the luge. Well, no, wait a minute, this is the Summer Games. Okay, he's running the marathon. Okay,
there you go. He could be pole vaulting. Yeah, all types of fun stuff there. Yeah, no, that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. We got obviously, like you said, the Winter Games just ended, so we've got some time, but it's close proximity. We'll see if they do anything to get people in the park or just to leverage that partnership. But they've been officially named.
Okay, cool. All right, and we stay on the West Coast because folks have noticed some things being moved around backstage, right?
Yeah, well, we have some giant dinosaurs that are kind of being moved around, and you might be more familiar with this. This is the first time I've ever seen these dinosaurs, but I guess what we're seeing is the life-size Jurassic Park World props are moved backstage at the Hollywood, and it's kind of they're almost hinting that it's going to be part of the Fan Fest. We saw a giant T-Rex, and maybe there's one of the trucks or the cars that's going back there, a Spinosaurus, the front half of a Spinosaurus. But the weird thing is, Jim, they never announced anything Jurassic, World or Jurassic Park for Fan Fest. But why else what else do you think that they're doing? They're putting it backstage almost as where they would meet. Do you think this is just removing and just kind of sitting stuff there and we're all getting excited? Or do you think they could just add Jurassic World to the Fun Fest activities without branding it?
Well, I just wonder if this is something that's moving on a parallel track. Because didn't we see a casting notice a few weeks back for folks to do walk around versions of John Hammond and Ian Malcolm and even Dennis Nedry.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're gonna do walk around, and maybe it's just like an added thing, or I don't think there's any other special events. Maybe they do like something just one-off, just for park guests. I don't know, but it's interesting enough that people are taking note and taking pictures and asking questions. So I figured we should ask questions as well.
Okay. Well, let me make a few calls, see if anybody has heard anything. Because again, those are amazing props. I'd love to see them myself.
Right.
All right. Now pivoting back to the East Coast, and I say this as somebody who has entirely too many books in his house, and I think I probably did over time buy a couple of books and all the books you can read in Seuss's Landings, but so this quietly closed recently?
Boarded up, it seems like. The window's blocked off with nobody saying anything, just shows up. And this is kind of how I know we're doing a podcast now, because we're talking about a little shop in Islands of Adventure, and we're talking about it closing down or just shutting down. I'm like, is this news? Is this not news? But to me, as a Seuss fan, this is news to me. I'm like, we hung out in this little shop. It's all the books you can read. It's right next to where they have the little show area where the Lorax comes out, and I think Cat in the Hat and Sam I Am, they all do that little story time. But there's this nice little store in there. You go in there, they sell books. You can sit. I believe you could even color in there. We hang out there every trip at least a little bit. But it just kind of shut. They just shut the doors and covered up the wall or the windows. And I'm wondering, this is just a simple refurb that's just like they didn't want to make a big deal out of, right? I mean, I can't imagine what you'd put there.
Yeah, I mean, face it. This is a tough era for books. Again, in fact, every time I go into Barnes and Noble, it seems like, well, okay, here are the toys, and here is the music, and here are the movies, and so, oh yeah, books. It's an interesting age, and that. And face it, every storefront in a theme park has to pull its weight. It's got to do, good, solid sales, per square foot. And I just wonder if all the books you can read was actually doing okay. So, again, same thing. Let me make a call or two and find out what's going on here. It'll be interesting to see, when this reopens, what it reopens as.
And how many books are in there, I guess, because you're right. You're not carrying around too many books at theme parks, especially in a park like that where half the lands have some type of water.
There we go.
Involved. So unless you got a stroller or you go buy a locker. So that'd be interesting. Yeah, but we'll keep an eye on it, and I feel like it's something worth mentioning to see if the doors open back up again.
All true. All right. So with that, folks, that completes the news portion of today's show. But when we get back from this break, we're going to return to California, but oddly enough, we're going to take a look at what got changed at Universal Studios Hollywood, and that was largely because of what the folks at Universal had seen at Epcot. But first, this.
When you want your spring break to feel like... and your kids' pool day to feel like... and your hotel bed to feel like... ooh, and room service to feel like... because at Hilton, hospitality feels like...
Your cabana's ready. Would you like fresh towels?
It matters where you stay. Book now at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso. Introducing Virtuo Up, the latest in a long line of innovation from Nespresso. It's innovation you can touch, sense, and taste in every single cup. With a 3-second start, easy open lever, and dedicated brew over ice button, it's even easier to enjoy your coffee your way. Sip for yourself. Shop Virtuo Up exclusively at Nespresso.com.
And we're back. Okay, Eric, today's story starts in the mid-1980s. And this is the moment when the Universal Studio Tour out in Hollywood is officially beginning its transition, from being Southern California's most popular movie studio tour to becoming a really for real theme park. This is about rebranding. Because you got to remember, once upon a time, Universal's tour out in Hollywood was known as the Universal City Studios Tour. And by the way, this is why when Universal had first bought, those over 400 acres of land outside of Orlando, the original name for this project, Eric, was Universal City, Florida. But now that the mouse is building something down in Florida that it was originally going to call the MGM Studio Tour. And by the way, that name, Eric, hangs in there till early '88 for Disney World's Third Gate. It's in fact, Craig McNair Wilson once told me this story. That he's working on the Disney MGM Studio Tour. In fact, he's the guy who dreamed up the Streetmosphere people, the citizens of Hollywood Boulevard. And so, this entire time they've been calling it the Disney MGM Studio Tour. And then one day, Dick Nunes calls them all into a meeting, and it's like, we're concerned. The people will get confused because Magic Kingdom is a theme park, Epcot Center is a theme park. So we're changing the name of this project from Disney MGM Studio Tour to the Disney MGM Studio Theme Park. And Craig, who, historically was a smartass, raised his hand. And it's like, well, okay, why are we, they're confused? First of all, who's confused? All right. Show me this confused person. And secondly, if we're doing this, why are we not then changing the name to the Magic Kingdom theme park or, the Epcot Center theme park? It's the Department of Redundancy department.
Right. Right.
And Dick is like, well, Epcot Center is Epcot Center. And it's like, yeah. So, but seriously, they then had to spend all of this money to everything that was out there that said Studio Tour and had to be changed. But anyway, back to Universal. They're facing a moment. Oh, wait a minute, we're opening, a second attraction. If we're ever going to brand, this is the moment to brand. So West Coast operation changed its name from Universal City Studios to Universal Studios Hollywood. And then the project that's under construction on the East Coast changes its name officially from Universal City Florida to Universal Studios Florida. And by the way, the Cinemagicians. All right, I'm sorry. We have to stop for a moment. Have you ever heard this name before, Cinemagician?
Jim, I asked you, I think, on one of the first episodes if they had a different name for an Imagineer, and I think you came up with this, and it went in one ear, out the other. I'm like, I can't remember this.
All right. There's a reason that, this didn't stick. The people at Universal hated this name. They just felt like, look, we're not Imagineers. Don't try to make us Imagineers. We're professionals. We design ride shows and attractions, and let's have a dignified name. And eventually they did get one, Universal Creative. The team members who work for Universal Creative. But for a time, and what's so funny is you can get the guidebooks from the late 80s when they're really trying to sell this. And it's like the Cinemagicians at Universal. And it's like, they just built the giant Kong animatronic. And it's like, oh, please.
It does come off as that they should be wearing like funny hats and robes. It almost comes off a little sorcery. So I understand why we canceled that. Imagineer does roll off the tongue and you get it. You understand it. And they do seem more like engineers. Cinemagician seems more like magicians. And I'm with them. I'm like, Universal Creative. I'm cool with that.
Okay. But at the same time, it's this notion of, okay, we are transitioning what we do out in Hollywood from a studio tour that has a couple of shows and that sort of thing, that we're making a decision that this is going to be a really for real theme park out here. And so, what does a really for real theme park have? And, and what was interesting is that on MCA's dime, a core group from Universal Creative went down to Orlando and spent a week at Disney. And what they came back with was, let's talk about Epcot. And it's like, let's especially talk about the World Showcase section of, Epcot, because what we saw when we walked around there was how people, the money they were spending to eat and shop in teeny tiny recreations of Great Britain and France. And it's like, we could do that here, couldn't we?
Well, they got sets and everything, right? Isn't that kind of what it is?
Well, it was like, they were looking especially at the upper lot in the area that back then was called the Entertainment Center. And they had only just completed construction. In fact, they spent $29 million, Eric, and they built this 7-level parking structure, built it into the hillside there, with room for 2,800 cars. It opens in 86 as the Carl Laemmle parking structure, named after, of course, the studio's founder. But, at the end of the day, people would come out of the park. I'm in how do I pronounce that name?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, and people, it's just that eventually it's like, give them a name they'll remember. And so the Frankenstein, it's the Frankenstein parking structure.
Oh, poor Carl.
There we go. Poor Carl. But the interesting thing is that the way the Frankenstein parking structure was built is this 7-level building, and again, built straight into the hillside. But it allowed the upper lot, again, the entertainment center, to increase its overall square footage by an acre or two. Which, in the eyes of the members of the Universal creative team, was just enough land to create Universal's answer to Epcot Center's World Showcase, which was going to be the streets of the world. And this $75 million addition to the Universal Studio Hollywood would be up and running by 1988. But we'll get to what initially made this addition to their West Coast operation so special in a moment. But first,
we all have that dream trip we've been wishing we could go on. But too often, life, or usually price, gets in the way. That's why Priceline is here to help you turn your dream trip into reality. With up to 60% off hotels and up to 50% off flights, you can book everything you need for your next adventure. Don't just dream about that next trip. Book it with Priceline. Download the Priceline app or visit Priceline.com and book your next trip today.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
And we're back. Okay, so Eric, top of today's show. You shared a Universal survey, and Universal has been sending out surveys since they've had a studio tour, 64 thereabouts, and they continued to survey them in the 70s and the 80s, and in fact, this is the question they would repeatedly ask folks in survey after survey after survey was, what was the one thing that you really wanted to do today in the park that you didn't get to do? And what was interesting is the consistent answer that visitors to Universal Studio Tour out in Hollywood said is that they're on the tram and they're rolling by all of these amazing historic sets. And it's just what they would really have loved to be able to do is to have the tram stop. Let us get out. Let us, walk around and get up close to some of these things. Take a look at them. And of course, that's really not something Universal can do, largely because there are actual movies and TV shows being shot on the lower lot. Not to mention, there are things like insurance issues. You get the idea.
Yeah, you know how many people would get lost, then
there we go.
It'd be like field trips at school. Everybody get in a row. No, I don't think they would want to do that.
I share a story here. I was invited to a Universal, a horror night press event. I want to say this was like 3 or 4 weeks before it opened, so they were still constructing the sets. And so they literally gave me a drive on. And, and I was supposed to drive, straight to the, where the set was being constructed, on the lower lot, which was, in the New York area. And I did eventually get there. But at the same time, it's like, I have a drive on. I can go anywhere I want on the lower lot. And I got there an hour early and drove around. And then when my interview was over with Wilfred Valderrama from the 70s show, he was actually...
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, he was a very, very nice guy. They were doing this amazing, La Chupacabra themed, so it was a wonderful interview. But then, 2 hours afterwards, I'm still driving around the Universal lot. It's like, I seem to have gotten turned around. Where am I now? Well, let me get out of the car and find out. And it's
You're kind of known for that, Jim.
I know. I have a very poor sense of direction and not to be trusted in any way. All right. Anyway, so again, Universal can't do this. They can't let people wander around sets. But the interesting thing is that what they're doing out in Orlando with that theme park is they're actually deliberately building a park, first of all, a theme park that's going to double as a place where you can film, films and TV shows. So, for all the facades are just as detailed out in Hollywood, but the key difference is that, behind those facades are actual stores or attractions or restaurants. And, the folks back in Hollywood were like, look, we're doing this in Florida already. Can't we bring this idea back home here on this acre or two of land that we've now acquired thanks to building the Frankenstein parking structure? We've extended the upper deck. Couldn't we do something here and create a space just like down in Florida, where we have, these super, detailed sets that we can actually use in production, but that guests can actually walk around with, which brings us now to Streets of the World, which was the very first time that visitors to Universal Studios Hollywood could then walk around an actual movie and television set. And want to stress here that these did actually get used, Eric. In fact, Beverly Hills 90210, in their third season of the show, these episodes would have aired in the fall of 1992. They involved Brenda Walsh going into vacation to Europe, and she spent some time in Paris. And when you're looking at Sharon Doherty, and she's sitting in an outdoor cafe, it's like, it looks very Parisian, but it's not in France. It's in the streets of the world over at Universal Studios Hollywood. And by the way, just to give you a sense of what this was like when it debuted in '87, this is what Universal sent out to the world. Our entertainment center is now bigger and better than ever with the recent addition of actual movie sets you can walk around in and around, even while filming is taking place. These locations include a fog-enshrouded London, which is home to Sherlock Holmes's 221B Baker Street. Or you could stroll down a nearby cobblestone street and you're suddenly in gay Paris, home to the naughty Moulin Rouge nightclub, as well as a picturesque French courtyard. And you can enjoy authentic French cuisine at a nearby cafe. Or if you prefer the nostalgia of the 1950s, just take a stroll around the block and there you'll find Mel's Diner from that hit Universal Pictures release, American Graffiti. By the way, Eric, when this area first opened, the Streets of the World also had a section that paid tribute to another hit Universal Pictures release, and this one fairly short-lived. It was adjacent to Mel's Diner, and this was Animal House, to be specific, where the Deltas, lived in that John Landis movie.
Do you have to show ID to get into this part? I'm sure it wasn't necessarily kid friendly.
Well, that was the interesting thing. They basically set up the facade, so it was you could go up on the porch and get your picture taken with props and stuff from the film, but But again, remember, that came out July of 1978. This is now summer of 87. And, it was an R-rated, kind of raunchy comedy. And so it wasn't getting the foot traffic or the reaction, I think, that anybody expected. And so, and again, you got to remember that, we were just talking about all the books you can read and how important it is in a theme park environment for, your square footage to pull your weight. And, in the end, the Animal House just wasn't getting the reaction that they hoped. So they pulled it down and of course, put in retail. Now, mind you, might have gone differently if they'd actually paid a beefy guy to play Bluto Blutarski, John Belushi's character from Animal House. But on the other hand, Eric, this side of the park, they just flooded the zone with characters. I mean, they had their cartoon characters, Woody Woodpecker, Fievel from American Tail. In fact, the Littlefoot and Sarah, Land Before Time dinosaur characters. These were the original set, as opposed to the ones that could sing and dance in the show we talked about last week. A fun little side note here. Right outside of 221B Baker Street, you'd often see two performers playing Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And interesting thing, Eric, Universal had a legitimate right to include these two, characters in the Streets of the World area back in the late 30s. Well, actually, to be clear here, it was February of 1942 through the tail end of 46. Universal got the rights to the Arthur Conan Doyle stories, made 12 movies with Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce playing Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. But what was interesting about this is because they were making these during World War II, they updated Sherlock Holmes. So he's not fighting in Victorian England. He's in England of the 1940s, and Sherlock is doing battle with Nazis and saboteurs. By the way, folks, I bring that up because when Eric and I were pre-gaming earlier this evening, and I mentioned the Sherlock Holmes part of this, you were saying that you were a big fan of Sherlock, the Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman thing, right?
Oh, yeah. I had my BBC face, Jim, where I was watching lots of Doctor Who and lots of Sherlock, and I was all about the BBC at the time, or BBC America, I think it was on TV. Yeah, I love that show. And you're a fan as well?
Oh, yeah. No, I watched all 4 seasons. And in fact, it ended its run in 2017. And, let's face it, a lot of us have been waiting patiently for a 5th season. And what's interesting is that Steve Moffat and Martin Gatiss, the show's creators, have flat out said that, I don't think this is happening. And that's largely because both Benedict and Martin really love what they did. And they don't want to mess up people's memory of Sherlock by coming back and doing either a lousy standalone movie or a less than perfect 5th season. And it's the notion of, sometimes you just leave something, leave well enough alone.
Yeah, Jim, they also found some of that Marvel money, and they probably aren't looking, they're being lured back a little bit. We needed them to kind of go broke a little bit, so that way, I guess we have to now.
Now, that brings up an interesting question that just today in the car, I was thinking of, as sort of noodling on today's show. Is there a scene there's 40, Marvel movies at this point. Is there a scene in any of these where Cumberbatch and Freeman work together?
This is another reason why I love having a podcast, because somebody out there will probably know. And we won't have to go through all the footage. But that is interesting. I never put it together until you're just talking them both. I'm like, hold on. Why? Oh, they're both in the movies. Interesting.
Yeah, I would love to see a Sherlock and Watson reunion, even in the Marvel sphere.
Sure.
But anyway, as they say, all good things must come to an end. And the interesting thing is Universal's version of 221B Baker Street, actually, it disappeared back in 2018 to make room for that theme park's Secret Life of Pets Off the Leash ride. And and also, the entertainment center, the earlier iteration of the upper lot that went away and became the Universal Plaza back in 2013. And that project actually cleaned up a lot of the clutter that had previously been in this part of the park. Though Mel's Diner in the Paris section of streets are still alive and well. In fact, just got some love in 2023. And as we close up this week's feature, folks, I'm actually looking forward to revisiting this space next month when Eric and I, with the rest of the Herseys, visit Universal Studios Hollywood. Just going to be intrigued to see what you think of this, miniature version of Epcot's future world, and whether or not you can see that, where the cinemagicians, try to, work a little Disney magic.
Yeah, no, this is very interesting. I didn't know anything about it, but granted, I've been trying to learn over the last, 93 episodes. I've been primarily trying to learn the Orlando version of the parks, and now I'm super excited to really hammer in and learn some of the Hollywood stuff here. So you'll get the point. You'll say, all right, that's where it was. Let's go to Baker Street over here. Well, it might be while we're in the middle of, by the way, the Secret Life of Pets is the #1 ride that my kids and probably all of us are very excited to do, because that is not an Orlando, they don't have that down there. So we're pretty jazzed to go to this one. So I'll be taking it in.
Okay, I think you will be intrigued. It does some very interesting things. But on that note, folks, that will do it for this week's edition of the Epic Universal podcast. By the way, if you have topics and suggestions for stories that you'd like Eric and I to cover on a future edition of this podcast, please let us know. Feel free to send those ideas along through social media. And beyond that, just want to thank you for listening. And Mr. Hersey and I will be back next week.